Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to episode 5 to Muslim Billionaires. Thankfully, I'm happy that we even got here to episode 5. It's just been great understanding of my podcast and how everything's been going well. You guys already know the deal at this point. If you guys want to follow, that'd be amazing, and support. Show me any DMs about this podcast, that would also be great. Simultaneously, I would like to say, without further ado, let's get into the subject. So today, I want us to really talk about respectability. And what does respectability actually even look like? So I separate respectability into two places, right? There's respecting yourself, which is self-respect, and then understanding and respecting the values of other people. So I'm going to start with self-respect. I think initially that's how we could understand what the values of what other people have established and what world you could get into by just having a sense of self-respect. So what does self-respect actually look like? I mean, self-respect looks like something simple as the people you surround yourself with, the places you go to for social events or social gatherings or anything aside from that. Even as simple as what content you consume on a day-to-day basis from your home. That, in addition to all the other things that I just mentioned, can create what self-respect looks like. Now, we can talk about how to get to that place of diagnosing yourself, but let's talk about the element of what diagnosing or self-evaluation looks like, right? I go through 3 different stages, right? There's, when it comes to the idea of self-respect but self-development, because they coincide with each other, I go deen, mentality, and character, right? So deen, meaning spirituality, growing within your spirituality. Respecting yourself is knowing that you have the respect and understanding of what Allah has given you and what God has gifted you. And growing through that spirituality by praying and asking for guidance from God. That is deen. And even from a spiritual sense, for those that are not Muslim that are listening to this, there is a spiritual element from that too, right? Humbling yourself and knowing that, you're imperfect and you're not arrogant enough to go above and beyond and go above the program. And knowing this world is not created by you, but moreover by a bigger entity, a stronger entity, an entity that we can't even imagine within our minds, right? Then there's the mentality aspect. So I always say reconfigure your mindset and develop your mentality. What do I mean by that? Okay. So reconfiguring your mindset, meaning taking away the clutter that comes from your mind or that you've developed through your mind, right? Unlearning all the nonsense that you've been grown to show or learn about through so many other external forces, meaning TV shows, movies, the people you grew up with, and everything else. Just have a clean slate. Not saying you may not go back to the path of what you've learned already, but just have a clean slate, right? Reconfigure your mindset and go back into the world and seeing and picking and choosing what's right from wrong or wrong from right. And that's the biggest issue, because now, especially now, we literally have blurred the lines between what's right and what's wrong, and even essentially leading into thinking wrong is right and right is wrong, right? So that's reconfiguring your mindset and then developing your mentality, right? Now that you've built a foundation, it's now developing your mentality, right? Now you have the mindset, now you've been building yourself spiritually, simultaneously. What is the next thing? It's character. And this, where the self-respect comes in. Not saying the self-respect didn't align with every part of it, right? Initially, even taking that journey comes with self-respect, because now you're having a realization of knowing that you're making mistakes, you're making decisions that compromise everything that you're imagining yourself to be, especially from a positive version of yourself. So lastly, I think character is a big part. The places you go to, the people you hang out with, the content you consume, how you represent yourself, not only in the real life, but a lot of us, we downgrade or we underrate the idea of who we are from a digital version, right? That's just me on social media. No, that is you in real life. The digital version of you is an extension of who you are. Now, how you handle all of this is really up to you. How you build yourself up at that time, or having this reevaluation of yourself, is really up to you. The unfortunate part, for those that are listening, sometimes, you can even argue most of the time, usually happens when you bump your head multiple times, meaning the only time you start to reevaluate yourself is something drastic happens in your life, right? A mistake that happened, correct? You run into the law, you've done something terrible to somebody else, whether if you're a man to a woman, whether you're a man to some of the guys that you grew up with and you did something behind their back, and and there had to be a reevaluation period for you. Sometimes it takes that, but sometimes the smarter people, or the more intelligent people, which I'm hoping everyone is here listening, realize, you know what, if that person has done that and I've seen the results of that person, why would I stumble upon doing the same thing? That is a sense of respect. And if it's for those that are at that level, and I'll get to the people that keep bumping their heads and stuff like that, and seeing how we can, reevaluate that issue. But for those that are in the stage of, hey, I know what they're doing is terrible, I got to find a way. What is that way? Is the question. So for those that are having the trouble to find the way or find the path, that is the complete opposite of those that you're seeing that are making those mistakes. Solitude, being alone. You have to embrace being alone. You have to understand who you are as a person, having those conversations with yourself. I think that's very, very essential. I think writing those things down, of what your potential is and what your purpose is something that you need to strive for. And simultaneously, when you're taking that path, having Allah being the guidance of that. Because here's the thing. When you want God to guide you, God is going to take away those people that are not going to be contributing to that, so thus being alone. And having the opportunity to be alone, you should be grateful. Because how many times are you going to have to build that connection with God, right? And without having any disturbance or distractions from other things. Meaning, let's say God put you in a position of being alone. Finally, you ask God, you pray to Him, and finally you're in a place where being alone is a very essential part of your self-growth, right? Why are you worried about that? This is the best part of your path, right? Because now this is the beautiful connection that you can have with God. Whereas when God starts pouring things to you, family, a job, kids, you may not have the same opportunity as you do now. Meaning, if you're in a position that don't have, if you're in that position that you don't have those things at all, So to me, when you're having that connection with God and being alone, essentially you're developing your self-respect. Now, with all those things that I just mentioned and building that self-respect, right? What does that mean, right? What does that mean? When you get to that place and get to that level, what does that mean essentially? Well, what it means is you have built values for yourself. You have goals now. You have a purpose now. You've developed your character now. You've reconfigured your mindset, developed your mindset. Reconfigured your mindset, developed your mentality. You've grown to be a better person. You've grown to have a better connection with God. All those things all together has come to a place now that you have self-respect for yourself because you've built values for yourself. And essentially now leading into what I was going to get into is respecting other people's values as well. Sometimes, for those that haven't built those values for themselves, we respect somebody's values so much that we forget who we are. And alongside of it is you're just building, adding to somebody else's dream, or respecting them to the point where you don't even know who you are. This situation usually even comes from a relationship, the dating relationship, I should even say. In the dating market that we live in, society, from a societal perspective, being romantically linked with somebody and then losing your own self-respect to respect somebody and not knowing who you are, essentially, you know? Now, that usually comes with not knowing who you are, and this comes from even speaking to the sisters, like, the fact that you don't even know your respect, sometimes a man could take advantage of that, right? And it could come vice versa too. You know, if a brother is essentially not knowing who he is, you're not going to essentially know who the other person is too. So going into understanding the values of somebody, right? You need to start understanding what it takes to even get to those values, right? This is essentially why we have such trouble in our community of what marriage even looks like. Because if we don't have self-respect for ourselves, and this is for all the brothers and sisters, if we don't have self-respect for ourselves, you're only going to attract people that don't have self-respect as well. Now, if two people don't have self-respect with one another, it comes down to who is more advantageous in the scenario of coming together, right? Now you're leveraging romanticism, who likes who better, what benefits do I get from this situation, and how do I move on from it if essentially I get a better opportunity. And it's sad on both parts, because it's like, instead of being lost within the world and being lost within yourself and fixing yourself, you're adding into other people's burdens, and then having a lack of accountability for what mistakes that you've made, because you don't see yourself as being a place of seeing yourself at a lost place. So essentially, respecting the values of somebody is respecting yourself. You can't have peace if you don't have peace within yourself. Every single thing. You can't have happiness with other people if you don't have happiness with yourself. Everything comes with who you are internally. But the problem is, we don't see how we can build that respect because we don't put time in ourselves. I've said this a few podcasts ago. We were born to build relationships with everything else except ourselves. The period and the moment that we start taking on to ourselves, God has gifted us a moment, every single one of us, an alone moment at least, a moment that we could just be alone, where we had an opportunity to take a moment to see who we are, a reevaluation period. How many of us have taken that advantage? And how many of us just took a break and consumed the content and things that distract us from having that moment? Maybe a lot of us don't know it, but how many times have we just been put in the corner and said, you know what, it's time to sit down? As crazy as it sounds, the pandemic gave us that opportunity. Exceptions to the people that suffered and, the people that went through a lot, through the sickness and disease that came through. The people that haven't, and everybody was healthy within your family. When you had the opportunity, when the world was shut down, you also had the opportunity to reevaluate yourself. So once the pandemic was over, you would come out stronger. But most people fought to go outside, when inside was probably the essential aspect of your life, a huge turnaround of your life. It questioned your discipline. It questioned your alone time and not having the fear of being alone, right? It questioned everything, really. And this is why I say we put on a facade of what does it look like for us to actually be alone? And what does it actually look like for us to be independent? As I said, a big part of that is working behind the scenes, right? So essentially, having self-respect only comes with a reevaluation period and a foundation being showing humility and humbleness. Knowing that you're not perfect, you're broken, you have pieces that you need to put together, and not allowing somebody else to do that and take other people to take responsibility and putting those pieces together for you, right? For both brothers and sisters, right? You need to fix yourself. And if you need somebody to help you, essentially an extension of that, then you should seek that help. But simultaneously, that work needs to be done by you, right? You cannot change your mindset if you allow your mindset to be changed by somebody else. Meaning having influences from other people or other sources to tell you exactly what the world actually looks like. I'm not here to tell you what the world looks like, but I am here to tell you to go on a journey to figure out how the world actually functions, you know? And at that point, that respect will start coming in fast. And essentially, once you start respecting yourself, you're going to be in a world where having a day-to-day activity of knowing who you are and what you're trying to get to, you're only going to find people that can contribute to the values you built for yourself. That's it. Now that you're on a path, you're in a car, now everybody is going to be in that car. You know? Not everybody's going to be in that car. God has gifted every single one of us a car, but how many of us are actually in the driver's seat of it? That's the question, really. A lot of us are not even in the driver's seat of that car. You know what's in the driver's seat of that car? Hopelessness, helplessness, depression, right? Furthermore, social media sometimes takes the driver's seat of the car. TV characters, dating partners, romantic partners, essentially, right? The day that you start to figure out that God has gifted you a car and God has given you the opportunity to be in the driver's seat of your car is the day you start to figure out who actually deserves to be in that car, right? And then once you start driving that car, right, not everybody's going to fit. Some people have to get out. Some people have to come in. You're going to take that path. While you're taking that path, metaphorically speaking, once you start driving on a certain path, you're going to see cars everywhere. Some cars that stopped on the side, trying to distract you and say, come here. There's other cars on the other side going the wrong way, taking a completely different path, going backwards. And you see that person not even in the driver's seat of that car. Social media is driving it to the other side of it. So essentially, your self-respect comes with having a realization of what not only God has gifted you, but also knowing what you are, what you're striving for. So thus, when you start building those values, you can start understanding which people that have also those built the discipline and values, how could they contribute to it. And at a certain point while you're on the road, on the path, right, you'll be so confident to stop the car at one point, get out the car, and start giving lectures to the people that are going the wrong way. Because God has gifted you the car. God has gifted you the sense of taking the driver's seat of that car. But God is also waiting for you to get out that car and start telling other people to come on that path that you're on. Metaphorically speak, I don't want everybody to start realizing, what cars are just driving on the other side and they're not even the driver. We're not getting into that part, okay? I don't want anybody to get into car accidents and stuff like that. Because, you know what? This brother on this podcast told me I don't need to drive the car. No, I did not say that. So it's crazy. So hopefully, inshallah, I hope we've tapped into certain things about this, about self-respect, about understanding what respectability actually looks like, about what we need to learn about ourselves, being humble alongside of it, who we are, once you establish those values, you can only find people that contribute to those values, but also spread the knowledge of how you got there. Again, God has given you great power comes with great responsibility. So for you to have that great power, relish into that, relish into the point where, God has gifted you that skill set or that talent, but also take pride in having God being responsible for, God giving you that responsibility as well, inshallah. Alright, assalamu alaikum. This podcast has ended, so see you guys later in the next episode.